I am Anna Seewald, and this is Authentic Parenting, a podcast about personal development in the context of parenting, where I explore how you can find more calm, connection, and joy in parenting through the process of self-discovery and inner growth with a trauma-informed lens. I'm a parent educator, and my mission is to help children by helping parents. The motto of the podcast is raising our children, growing ourselves. Today, I want to share with you my recent interview on Learn from People Who Lived It podcast. I enjoyed my appearance on this show, and I asked the host, Matthew, for permission to share it with you. If you are new to the podcast, the chances are that you are not familiar with my personal story, and as a longtime listener, you may know parts of it. I think our stories make us who we are, and while I share other people's stories on my podcast and believe in the power of storytelling, I have never shared my full story on my own podcast in 7 years. And maybe that's something we need to examine and psychoanalyze. Only once I have shared another interview that I did on someone else's podcast years ago. What was great about this particular interview was in a short amount of time, the host was able to showcase my story. And in the second part of the conversation, he asked me to share actionable tips and tools for emotional regulation, emotional flexibility, increasing happiness, healing, and overall well-being. And I really love that. I would be curious to know what new things you'll learn about me after listening to this interview. So without further ado, please enjoy my recent interview on the Learn from People Who Lived It podcast.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
Well, hi there, it's Matthew Blades, and I'm really excited to bring you this edition of Learn from People Who Lived It. We're going to visit with Anna, who tragically lost her mom, cousins, and many more family and friends to a natural disaster back in the late 80s. Her town experienced an earthquake, and in those 12 seconds, she lost it all. She's here today to talk about that experience vividly and what she's learned as a result of going through that. And I'm telling you, one of the things you're going to be so impressed about, or maybe many of the things you're going to be impressed about, is how capable she is now, how emotionally flexible she is, how deeply empathetic she is, and more than anything, the set of tools that she reaches for when she's going through it. This is going to be a powerful podcast, and I'm just so grateful to Anna for coming on and sharing what she knows. Enjoy this episode of Learn from People Who Lived It with Anna Seewald. Anna grew up in Armenia, which if you don't know your geography, if you know where Syria, Turkey, and Georgia are, we're kind of in the right place. They're right between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea is where you grew up. So first up, welcome to our podcast, Anna. How are you today?
Thanks for having me. I'm feeling great, and I'm excited for this conversation.
Me too. We have a couple of goals on this podcast, which is to help people feel less alone and to encourage them to talk about it. And you talk a lot about your childhood and how up till 13, it was a pretty great ride for you in Armenia. I'm guessing you grew up in a family, brothers, sisters? Give me a little bit of the lay of the land there.
Yes, I grew up in a family. I had a mother, father, and a brother, younger brother. And in the same town, I had my grandparents, my uncles and aunts. Even though we were not in the same household, we were very close-knit family. And to this day, I would say, I am friends and with my cousins. So I come from this rich family background, supportive, helpful, always there for you type of environment. My parents were teachers. They were young. It's hard to believe how young my parents were when the earthquake happened. I am 48 now, and my mom was 35 when the earthquake happened. So it's pretty shocking when you think about the age and numbers like that.
What was the date of that earthquake?
Well, the date was December 7th, 1988, and it was morning time. I believe it's like after 11 a.m. And the earthquake was literally less than a minute long, seconds long. And in just, as I say, just in 12 seconds, someone's life can change dramatically for the rest of your life. So that day, my life was divided into two parts, before and after, and I was changed tremendously, and I was never the same person.
So let's talk about that morning, if you don't mind. It's December 7th. You wake up. It's I'm guessing you have breakfast. It's December, so I don't know what the weather is like. But are you on your way to school December 7th? Like, give me a little bit of that story.
I was not on my way to school because my brother and I were sort of second shift in our school. I guess the school was small and they had more students. So they had morning classes and afternoon. We were part of the afternoon crowd. So in the morning, we were home together alone. My parents were teachers in a different school and they were at work. But the morning began, I would say, if we want to look at the morning, we want to look at the night before. So the night before, around 7 p.m., a sort of minor earthquake happened. And that was the first time that I've ever experienced an earthquake as a child. And, everybody obviously got alarmed, but nothing happened. It wasn't major. Then before we went to bed, around 10 p.m., another strike happened. And so when my parents put us to bed, I so remember what my mom said to us. She was a spiritual person, and she said, don't be scared if another earthquake happens at night. They usually come in threes. And so nothing happened at night, obviously. The third one was in the morning. So we didn't see our parents before they went to work. I guess we woke up late that morning, me and my brother, since we didn't have school.
I want to know because I have felt an earthquake before. I lived in St. Louis, Missouri, and we had a little 3.2 or 2.8. It was super low. It too was enough to get my attention. The house rattled a little bit. You could visibly see the walls kind of shaking, and it's very unsettling. It's 11 o'clock in the morning now, and the big earthquake starts to take place. What happens to your house during this big earthquake?
Well, we lived in an apartment building.
Okay.
And it just started shaking, up and down and horizontally, vertically. And I remember it came with a sound. Usually earthquakes come with a sound. I do remember that sound very vividly. I have that in my memory now. And literally everything crumbled down in a matter of seconds. We were watching TV, me and my brother, and as an older sister, I just grabbed my brother''s arm and I was on the couch. I just grabbed him off the chair and we sort of went into a corner and lay there, covered our heads with our hands, sort of in a child pose, and waited until the shaking was over. And, I have this image in my mind now. It's like it just goes dark, everything. And then when we opened our eyes and we wanted to get out of there, everything was, because it was a stone building, you see stone, you see dust, you see pieces of wood, you see debris. We were in the middle of this debris on top of this pile, because we were on the third floor, which was the top floor. And so you see broken doors and just
Are things falling off the walls or things coming out of the cupboards?
There were no walls anymore. So that's what I'm saying. We found ourselves like under an open sky, but here is our refrigerator, like on the pile of stone. I remember the refrigerator. I remember a door. We saw a door that was, sort of available to us. So we sort of scooted on this door to go down, and I honestly don't remember much of it except that first part, how we were trying to go sort of downstairs, which there were no stairs, but just to hit the ground. And somehow we did, and we ended up on the ground, but everything we couldn't get out of. It was just this dead end situation that you need to climb up again to end up on a street or somewhere where there was an exit. So we were stuck in this place, and we saw another woman, and she recognized us. She was our neighbor, and she said, "Kids, follow me." And we just followed her, and through obstacles and through all this debris, we got to the street. And it was a warm December day. You were wondering about the weather. It was an unusually warm day for December. And our apartment was very warm. So I was wearing a tank top, no shoes, no socks, just like house pants, sweatpants. And so was my brother. So we had no shoes, no clothes, and we just hit the streets like that.
Was there sirens going off or people screaming? I'm trying to imagine the visual that's going on. Is there chaos at this stage of the game?
Yes. There's huge chaos. There's chaos everywhere. There was the sugar factory next to our apartment building, not far. All the hot sugar syrup, I guess, was all over the street. So people could not even cross the streets because some people were stuck in that hot syrup. People were screaming and yelling, and there was dust, and it was dark. It was like dark clouds of dust and fire, and I don't remember sirens, but I remember a lot of screaming and running, crazy people trying to, get to their loved ones. And clearly I remember this building that was sort of across from our building that was not fully, our building fully collapsed. It completely did, yes. But there was this building across from us which wasn't fully collapsed. They had some walls and some structure was still standing, and there were people hanging and screaming for help. And I still have that. It was a factory, I believe, and people had lab coats on. I don't remember what factory it was, but it was just this insane, surreal scene that it's like a movie, and you are in this movie. And I remember I had like pink pants and a white shirt, and we were just trying to get to my parents' school, me and my brother, but we had no idea where they worked. We've never been to my parents' school. Even if we knew where their school was, first of all, by walking, you can't get there. Second of all, it's already earthquake. Everything is chaotic. Nothing resembles anything. So how are you going to get there? But we were determined to go to get our parents. And so we were just wandering on the streets until we saw a woman who recognized us again, because it's a small town, my town, with 20,000 people, and my parents were teachers, and everybody knew my family. So they recognized, that we were the grandkids of such and such, and they told us, "Where are you guys going? You should go to your grandparents' house right now." They sort of scolded us because we were just going to the complete opposite direction. And so we listened to these people, to this woman, I believe, and we turned back, and we head to where my parents' house was.
Can I ask you a question about talking about your mom and your dad here? And you and I are both parents. And what do you imagine your mom and dad were thinking about in those moments as the earthquake was happening and they were separated from their children?
Oh boy, that's such an emotional question. Well, I know the answer. I have to tell you. Years later, when I was studying psychology, I did research on children who were born after the earthquake. I was already a grown person doing research at the university. Right, the earthquake happened in 1988, and so there were kids who were born after 90, 91, 92. Here I was in this classroom, and I was talking to students. No, actually, it was about that, how the earthquake, I was measuring how children who were young, I think 7 years old, and those who were born after the earthquake, we were measuring certain things, right? These two groups of kids. Mm-hmm. And I'm in this classroom conducting interviews and talking to kids. And one child particularly gets up and says, I know who you are. Your mom was my teacher. She says, and when the earthquake happened, your mom, my teacher, said, oh, my kids. And my mom tried to sort of run out of the door, but she just got stuck in there. And so this kid witnessed how my mom died. And, she was a survivor, one of 4 survivor children from that classroom. And so I think my mom was thinking about us, but I don't know what my dad was thinking. And unfortunately, I lost my dad last year, so I cannot even ask. But I would imagine they were thinking about us, right? That would be the first thought that crosses your mind as a parent.
I would think the same thing, and I appreciate you reliving these difficult moments so that we can help, understand a little bit more about what's happening. And is it your opinion, Anna, that the earthquake brought out the best in people or the worst in people?
Oh man, both. I've seen both, and from that day on, I always questioned because I saw interesting things happen. I saw the entire humanity poured into Armenia to help, right? To rebuild, to rescue, to help, to bring humanitarian aid. And even the people, the survivors themselves were trying to help one another. There was even a TV program about my dad. He, as a survivor, and his school was hit very badly. My dad saved 57 children by himself, and he was wounded too. And so, this was on TV even. They covered and wrote about him. There were people who were doing heroic things. They were deeply compassionate, empathic, and helpful. I saw that side of humanity. And I also saw that some people took advantage. My neighbor, for example, stole a lot of things from survivors, right? The ruins that I was describing earlier, that we were trying to get out of the ruins, he was trying to get in, and he had access to people's possessions. And so he stole a lot of gold, a lot of things. So I saw the two sides of humanity, and I always wondered, is this human nature? Like under stress, under such dire circumstances, we come together, we help one another, we're compassionate, but we're also, is this human nature? What part is human nature? And I think, in my opinion, humans are capable of both. I used to think that humans are only, this capable of beautiful things and compassion, and I want to believe in humanity, but I think we have both. Especially when our survival is at risk, we can turn into beasts. I mean, just like parenting. I mean, look at us. We love our children to death, and we can do anything for our children. but we also hurt our children. We also yell at them. We also hit them. And so what is that? Is that part of trauma? Is that part of us? Is that true nature? I always wondered about those things. So I saw both things, and predominantly the more positive things. And I witnessed that when I came to the United States, 9/11 happened. That's the first time that I was here. My first month in the United States, 9/11 happened, right? And everybody was mobilized, right? Collectively helping and going through this experience. But you can see that after some time, that fizzles down and humans become quote unquote normal again and return to their ordinary lives, and they don't even care about one another. They become, self-absorbed, and they lead their own private lives. Yes, catastrophic events, collective trauma brings people together. There is this mobilization that happens, but unfortunately, that is not a lasting effect. From what I've observed.
You mentioned something at the very beginning of our conversation. You said, we have a good family. This is a tight-knit family. I live in a town that's small. People look out for each other. It was my experience, Anna, that after my dad died, I saw the dynamics in my family shift dramatically, and not for the positive. People got distracted. People withdrew. People didn't know what to do with their grief. People didn't know what to do with their pain. As a result, we became less close for I would say a long while. People had a hard time navigating that space. How were you in those moments? How was your family in that moment post earthquake? Did they have the wherewithal to come together and make things stronger, or were people in so much pain they couldn't even really help each other?
My family all came together. They didn't collapse. I only saw resilience and strong spirit and hope. They may have struggled internally. How could have not? But they didn't burden us with their own pain, or they didn't resort into their own worlds and disconnect from the world. My father and my uncle kept teaching in that town that was completely destroyed. They participated in rescuing people, finding people, and helping. So was my grandma and my uncles. In my family, I saw that spirit, that unbreakable human spirit. Yes, they suffered and struggled, but I didn't see them, depressed or, some people committed suicides in our town.
I'm sure.
Because, imagine you are a parent and you lost everyone, including your children, and you're the only sole survivor of your family. So I saw a lot of things. I saw children who survived and their parents didn't survive, and vice versa. And it was hard for a lot of people. So I was sort of studying that for many years. What was it about this human spirit that some people keep surviving and even thriving in the face of adversity, and some people just cannot make it? And some people just died of early age. We know how trauma can affect you. And my grandfather died of a heart attack because he buried all our relatives. He found all, my mom and my aunt and my little cousin. He buried everyone, and he witnessed a lot. And he just, his heart couldn't handle it. His heart was broken into 4 pieces when untimely. So I saw those kinds of things too, that people died because they couldn't bear the pain anymore. And then I saw my grandmother, they were trying to make things work, without losing their hope. And there was laughter, there was togetherness. It was just an interesting thing to observe.
Well, I love that you have provided us this look into your life, because it really sets us up for the second half of our conversation, which is you've eventually become a parent counselor. You guide parents now through trauma and abuse. You're somebody who should be in your role. Absolutely, without question. You have perspective. As you said, you've experienced loss in a lot of ways. And I've experienced, multiple deaths along the way. And after the loss of my dad, similar to what you said, I felt like, okay, I know where to put this. I know how to deal with this. I know how I need to treat myself. I know that I need to cry sometimes. I know that I need to laugh sometimes. I need to remember. Sometimes I need to forget. Like I kind of understand grieving in a way. And what I'm quick to tell people all the time is you will never learn more about yourself than after you lose a parent and you're forced to figure out who you are without them. And so my question that I want to ask you is, what have you learned about yourself, Anna, having lost your mom at an early age and now losing your father? What have you learned about you?
I am capable and resilient. And I think resilient is not the right word, because resilient means going back to the original point, right? When something bounces back, that's what resiliency is. But when you are shaped by a tragic experience, a loss, a trauma, you don't revert back. You change. You never go back. I'm not the same person. So to me, the word resilient doesn't encapsulate how I feel. I've never thought of myself as a survivor. I feel that does not apply to me, because I became stronger as a person in terms of emotional strength. I was thrown into this experience as a child, and I had to figure out a lot of things on my own. I had to be with my own pain and feel the enormity of raw emotions. And when you have no other choice but to feel the pain, you come out the other way a lot stronger, and you know that that's not going to kill you. And so challenges, everyday challenges for me, life's challenges, are just minor little obstacles. So I have a perspective about life that if I'm experiencing something today that is mildly or even severely challenging, I don't collapse. I know it's just a problem to be solved. So I have that attitude, and we can figure this out type of attitude. I am emotionally very flexible. I can hold pain and hold vitality and live and laugh at the same time. I am deeply empathetic towards other people's pain without neglecting myself. I can be very compassionate towards other people. That's why I became a psychologist. And so many things. I'm deeply grateful for things that I have. I don't have to cultivate gratitude to be happy. I am naturally grateful for the sky, for my body, for the water, for the air, for electricity, for things that could be gone and people take for granted. So I'm naturally very appreciative of nature, of people. I'm a very happy person. People always ask me, how come you're so happy? Like so many bad things happen to you. But that's exactly why I'm happy, because now I have an amazing life and I'm deeply appreciative and grateful for what I have. So many things about me, I became very attuned to people and to what they're going through and resonating with people. Many things.
Okay, let me figure out how I want to ask this question. I've got a psychiatrist who comes on my show, the podcast all the time, and he's almost every episode he will utter this phrase. He will say, When we experience trauma, it goes on our permanent record, which means it's never going away. And then I like to add, so that means we have to live with the sound. We have to learn to live with the sound of our record. We have to learn to live with the things that have happened to us. So, because you're a psychologist, you probably understand the idea behind, inner child wounds, traumatic events when you're a child, and the way that they can kind of shape your operating system and how you make decisions and some of those things. And so what I want to talk a little bit about is tools right now, if you don't mind. And maybe you can even be specific for you. What are some of the tools that you reach to when you start to feel a certain way about your traumatic event? Because it is never going to go away. You're never going to get over it. You're never going to forget it. So what do you do, Anna, when the moment hits you and it makes it hard to make a decision? It makes it hard to engage. It makes it hard to do this, because I'm sure these moments must happen to you.
They do, but I want to say something before I share tools and tips. Yes, you're right. The facts of our life will never change. I can never change what happened to me when I was 13 and I lost everything in 12 seconds. I can never change that. Does that haunt me every day? No, it does not. Does it come and bite me sometimes in a big way? Yes, that's absolutely true. Have I done some work, and I continue doing what I call radical self-care? Some people may call it reparenting work. I don't resonate with that terminology, but I call it radical self-care.
I resonate with that. I love that.
Or healing work. The triggers are there. The past is, yes, it's ingrained. It's there. But with years, if you engage in healing work and constantly seek new experiences to rewrite the old record. Like I remember cassette tapes, right? If you had a cassette tape of certain songs, I remember oftentimes if you didn't have a new cassette tape and you needed to re-record something over that current cassette tape, you could, but you couldn't hear the other song that was before on that tape. You could hear the new one. I think our psychology is that way too. I cannot get rid of the facts or the imprint that trauma had on me. The triggers are still there. Some triggers are very minor, non-existent because of the healing work. Some are very faint and don't even show up. Some maybe are dormant that I'm not even aware of, but they're not actively affecting me. That would be terrifying to live like that, because I have rebuilt my life, in a completely different place. I'm in the United States. I have my own life and I have a meaningful work and I have hobbies and I have people who enrich my life. And so what I would say is engaging in radical self-care is critical. Giving yourself the things today that you did not receive in childhood is huge. That requires an active sense of responsibility that I am going to care for myself, for my mind, for my heart, for my body, for my soul, every single day, consistently with small actions. And it may look very small in the beginning, but then it has this snowball effect. And one day, you're caring and treating for yourself deeply and with kindness. And I think I'm in that place now that I am able to care for myself and I'm not a victim to my circumstances. And I take active participation in my life. Yes, things happen to me and they do still impact me. There's a saying, the past is not dead, it's not even past. But our past is not going to determine how we live today, because I know and I feel, and this is how I live my life, that every day is a new day, because that's what I learned from the earthquake, right? Every day was very unpredictable. Life can be taken away from you. What I learned from the experience of the earthquake is that there are no sure things in life. It's unpredictable and it's uncertain. And so you have to enjoy and be present here and now today. And so I get up every day with that mentality, not on purpose, but it's just ingrained in me. And if something negative happened, let's say 2 weeks ago, I don't ruminate over that because it's gone. I'm not going to give attention to that thing. I'm not going to be affected by that event or that encounter. So it's not that I bypass it. When I experience something negative today, I allow myself to be in it fully and feel. But there is a limit. I'm not going to ruminate and wallow in that pain for days and days on end. I ultimately can change how I feel. I give myself permission to feel and honor the experience of what I'm going through. And if it's big, like a death of my dad, yes. But if it's just a minor incident, which most of our days consists of, small to moderate events, I move on. I do certain things, self-care techniques and tips. So what I could say is relationships are huge for me. I believe in the power of relationships, and I have people that I reach out to and I talk to. Nature is huge for me. I go into nature and I spend alone time in nature by just looking at leaves, and I have a deep sense of awe because of the earthquake for nature. And so nature immediately centers me, grounds me, and it's very healing. I journal, I listen to music. It depends what I'm going through. I reach out for certain tools. I also move my body, which is very important because mood follows movement. If you change your body state, your mental state will change as well. So even if you are not in a mood, know that your mood will follow your movement. So sometimes you just have to force yourself to take that one step to go outside for a walk, and your perspective shifts. I'm a strong believer in agency and a sense of responsibility for self-healing and changing how you feel. So I have lots of tools like that. And if I'm angry, I do certain things. If I'm sad, I do certain things. So I know not to avoid the experiences, but I also know not to wallow in them. They have an expiration date, and eventually you have to snap out of it, and because life is too precious.
You can't see me, Anna, but I am cheerleading everything that you're saying. My fist is in the air and I'm going, yes, yes, yes. Key into what she's saying right now. Listen to what she's saying, because because of the work you do. I know because of the podcasts and the work that I do. There are some people that stay stuck in their moment for a really long time. And there's some people that it never seems to get right for them, and they cannot leave their tragedy. They cannot leave their traumatic moment. But the tools you just mentioned, moving, I don't allow myself. When I'm angry, I do this. When one of the things that you said that's so wonderful that I just can't say loudly enough to people is you allow yourself to feel it when it happens. And that's so powerful. So many people will try to shut it down. They'll be like, you don't have time to feel that way right now. You're at work. It's not the appropriate time to feel that way. Screw that. When it comes, when it happens, you got to go through it, because otherwise you're going to push it to the curb and it's going to fester. It's going to get, in my opinion, it's going to get a little bit worse. And so I am so impressed by the way that you are able to articulate how you handle your self-care plans, because you and I are both, we have that in common. We are self-care people. We just want others to know that by taking care of themselves, they start to show up as a better version. And that's especially true of people that have gone through really difficult things in their lives. They are the people that really have to lean into an excellent self-care plan. And I know that you are somebody who's big into art, music, poetry, writing. And so some people don't like to talk about their stuff. So I'm going to address those folks right now with this idea of journaling and writing. And when you take pen to paper or keystrokes to your computer to get things out, do you have a process? Do you have something is there a way you start? What do you do when the words don't come naturally? Do you mind walking us through your modality?
Yes, I started journaling when I was 13, right after the earthquake. And I have all my journals, believe it or not. Almost all of them, except the first one. It was found and read, and then I burned it because I was deeply ashamed. They broke my privacy. After the earthquake, we were shipped to live with far relatives in the Republic of Georgia, and the people there found my journal. And one day I came home from school and I saw everybody in that household was gathered, and this woman was reading it out loud because I had written things about them too, and it was terrifying and a horrible experience. So I don't have my first journal, but I have a lot of them. They're pathetic. They're nothing interesting in them because it's always the same theme that I'm going through, especially in the beginning of my life. It was always, I'm abandoned. I feel alone. No one understands me. This is like the theme of my life, reoccurring theme. But so I would just write, expressive writing. Whatever I would go through, I would just sit down and write. Now the process looks a little different. So I don't write every day, unfortunately. So when I write, I don't follow any specific guidelines, or I don't have a specific journal. I just have a simple notebook. And I just write what's on my mind. It's disjointed thoughts that don't make sense. And I jump from one topic to another. And, today I discovered the journal, and it said, I saw Dr. Gabor Mate in my dream, and this is the dream. And then a very trivial thing that happened in my life that day. Then another thing that I processed from the day before. So it doesn't have a specific process, but I think what I would say, it's expressive writing. I would characterize it. Don't give too much thought what you're going to write. Sort of empty the contents of your mind and trust the pen, the writing process. You're writing for relieving yourself. You're not writing to, for perfection. You're not going to publish this anywhere. It doesn't have to be poetic or perfect. So for me, it's just this expressive writing, and whatever is on my mind, on my heart, it usually comes out after writing for several minutes. However, a theme emerges or a topic that is bothering me. And so I start to dig in a little deeper. It seems like in the beginning, there's this jumbled thoughts that come out. I'm going to cook this for dinner. I don't know why I said that yesterday. I'm dreaming about this, weird stuff like that. But then something deeper emerges in that writing. And I may write a paragraph, 4 pages, 3 pages, couple of sentences, and when it's done, it's done. And sometimes I go back and reread my journals. They give a lot of insight into my own life, into what I was going through at that period. Like today, I was going through a journal. I wanted to be ready for our conversation. I had written a journal entry how the earthquake changed me, and there were like 38 lessons that I had learned, and I was trying to find that entry, and I couldn't seem to find the journal that was in, but I found this old journal from last year, and I started reading it. So it was an entry. It said, "How am I surviving COVID-19?" And it was so interesting. I'm like, wow, holy cow. Like, my pandemic experience was not as bad in the beginning. I was really doing things to care for myself and to make the best out of the experience. But if you asked me, how was your pandemic experience? I would say terrible. It sucked. Right. It wasn't great. But when I went back to my journal, I learned that no, it wasn't all that bad, And it just gave me a different insight into my own psyche, into my own life, which is really, it's like talking to a therapist. Something changes in you when you change your perspective about the specific issue.
I have to tell you, what I'm thinking about right now as I'm listening to you talk is how incredibly proud your parents would be of you, and just how incredibly fulfilled you are making them with your decision to do what you do for a living and to try to impact the people that you are impacting. Your mom and dad were teachers, and so are you. And the legacy that you're carrying on and their honor, whether you know it or not, is very evident. And I feel it. It's strong on my heart as we're talking that what you're doing is important and needs to continue. And this is not easy stuff to talk about. As you well know, reliving those moments, that tragedy is not an easy thing to do. But in the spirit of healing and helping other people and teaching them, you're pretty exceptional, Anna. I'm glad we got a chance to meet you today. Thank you for coming on and being a part of this.
Wow, thank you so much. I really appreciate your words. It's very special and meaningful what you just said. It touches my heart. I really am grateful for our chat as well.
Great stuff, Anna. Thank you very much for our conversation. If people want to work with you, if people want to be a part of what you're doing, is there a general place you'd like us to funnel folks?
The main place is my website, which is authenticparenting.com. That's my online home, and everything else I do is there. I do speaking engagements. I have a podcast. I've been hosting it for the past 7 years. Can't even believe that.
Wow, good for you. What's the podcast called? Authentic Parenting?
Yes, it is.
Super.
I know. It's been an amazing journey. I've learned a lot. So 7 years of podcasting, it has amazing content. And I have services and products and courses. Everything is on my website.
We have 3 goals with Learn from People Who Lived It. 1, to help you feel less alone. 2, encourage you to seek out a coach, a therapist, a church, anyone who can help you get through your journey and find some healing. 3, when you're ready, share your story with us.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.